that they're going to be doing no tax on tips, no tax on senior Social Security, and no tax on overtime, and much more. It'll be the biggest tax cut for middle and working class Americans by far, and it is time for Main Street to win. And with this announcement, Bitcoin erupted from 93K upwards of $101,000. So this is actually extremely good news that the negative price action from the tariff announcements are over, and with the 90-day pause, now it's negotiation time. And so when we look at Bitcoin to the US dollar price chart, we can see we ended this downtrend since the 20th of January, even the beginning of December, to the 9th of April. And if we bring up the MACD and the relative strength index and compare it back to the past on top of Bitcoin stock to flow rainbow indicator, and I broke this down in a previous video about 8 days ago in expectations from the divergence that was playing out on the chart. And this is what I said. Bitcoin has broken out since the 20th of April from $84,000, and it's sitting at $94,000. We saw a breakout like this in the past after Bitcoin had pulled back drastically from about $64,000 down here to $29,000. In one of my previous videos, I showed you guys the different types of divergences. For example, on this one right here, we can see a lower low on the price chart on the right-hand side of the screen back here by July of 2021, but yet the relative strength index was making a higher low, which is simply a regular bullish divergence and a reversal pattern where the price rebounds off of the lower low and inevitably makes a trend reversal. And that's what we're starting to see right now for Bitcoin on the left-hand side of the screen, because the price chart right here from the 28th of February made a lower low on the 12th of March and then the lowest low on the 7th of April. And then sure enough, if you look at the relative strength index at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, the 26th of February, we were below 30 on the RSI, and then we put in a higher low by the 7th of April while the price chart put in a lower low. Sure enough, Bitcoin rebounds off of $75,000 and breaks out to the upside. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see Bitcoin was putting in higher highs right here on the price chart until about the 7th of September, until this major bull flag was formed, where Bitcoin sold off from $53,000 down to $40,000, a 24% correction. And so if we bring up the stochastic RSI, also the relative strength index for Confluence here, we can see a regular bearish divergence because the price chart was making higher highs, but yet the key indicators were making lower highs, such as the stochastic RSI. We can see this bearish cross right here at the end of July of 2021 when Bitcoin pulled back from $42,000 to $37,000. We put in a higher low than the previous low on the 21st of July. We rebounded off of that, and then we put in a higher high, but yet the stochastic RSI put in a lower high, as you can see right here in the middle of the screen. While the price chart was in an uptrend, forming higher highs and higher lows, the stochastic RSI was in a downtrend. Now, even for the relative strength index, we just continuously put in lower highs all the way until the 5th of September when Bitcoin topped out and then saw that 20+% correction. The RSI got rejected from about 67, came all the way down to 35, and then Bitcoin broke out higher. So the real key to understand here, what you must do right now, is pay very close attention to what I'm about to share with you, because it's about to happen again. And we're seeing it play out again. On the right-hand side of the screen, you guys can see the price chart is putting in a higher high right now, whereas the stochastic RSI is actually rallying back up from 30, and it's sitting at 71 for the K line, 47 for the D line. So I would expect on the next pullback for Bitcoin to be a lower high. But what's interesting is the relative strength index is actually putting in a little bit of a higher high at about 72 right now. Similar to what we saw back here on the 30th of July when the relative strength index topped out at 74. Saw that pull back to 56 and then started to put in lower highs from there, whereas the stochastic RSI on the left-hand side of the screen put in lower highs up until the 5th and 6th of September when Bitcoin experienced that 20% pullback. So at some point, I still do expect Bitcoin to pull back and that to affect the altcoin market. And I'll get into XRP in a little bit, hang tight, but we need to talk about Bitcoin first. And the reason why is because Bitcoin is obviously the leader of the markets. If Bitcoin doesn't break out, XRP isn't breaking out, and the rest of the crypto market isn't breaking out. And as much as you want to believe that XRP is going to untether from Bitcoin, that's not the way that it's worked this bull run cycle. Sure, there's moments where XRP has exploded, the main one being in November when the SEC dropped their appeal. Lots of liquidity flowed into XRP rapidly. But I'll explain what's going on in this range right now for XRP based on Bitcoin stock to flow rainbow indicator. But first, where I believe we are right now for Bitcoin is at some phase during this breakout right here that we saw back from July of 2021 until September of 2021. So this could actually extend higher. Yes, it could even extend past the all-time high for Bitcoin. Because if we look back to the past, just because we're seeing some similarities here doesn't mean it needs to play out identical. Because as you can even see during this yellow phase in the Bitcoin stock to flow rainbow indicator, there are some major differences here. So the chart doesn't look exactly the same. So I wouldn't expect the green phase for the Bitcoin stock to flow rainbow indicator to look the exact same as the past. Meaning if we see Bitcoin's price chart just continuously put in higher highs and higher lows, leading us into an all-time high, that could still be a bearish divergence on the stochastic RSI on the way up. And also it could lead us to a bearish divergence on the relative strength index on the way up before the next major, 20 to 30% correction. But at some point when Bitcoin does experience that first major pullback that's larger than 5 or 10%, and we see the stochastic RSI reset all the way down here below 20 for both the K line and the D line, on top of that, the relative strength index resetting somewhere closer to 30, similar to what happened back here on the 21st of September. You guys can see when Bitcoin pulled back from $53,000 back down to $39,000. Look at what happened to the stochastic RSI. We reset all the way down here at like 1 for the K line, the D line, before we experienced the next recovery to the all-time high. So the best point to enter into the markets was on that major pullback right there, because if you were buying on the way up, sure, it seemed exciting to jump into Bitcoin when all the bullish news was taking place back in the summer of 2021. But had you have waited, you could have accumulated $39,000 in September when you looked at the key indicators on the daily chart and even on the weekly chart as well too for Confluence. So right now with the relative strength index at 72, with the stochastic RSI experiencing a bounce, I would expect there to be a lower high in for the stochastic RSI and the relative strength index to top out here soon above 70, 80, or even potentially 90 before pulling back. Now, what's interesting there is on the left-hand side of the screen, when we saw the RSI pop above 70, that's when Bitcoin rallied up here to about $42,000 before experiencing this pullback to 37 and then rallying all the way up here to $53,000. So this breakout for Bitcoin right now, just from where we are on the relative strength index, is more comparable to where we were at the end of July, which is a sign that Bitcoin could actually march even higher in this divergence. We just need to keep a close eye on these indicators over the next few weeks. So if Bitcoin pulls back now, the support to watch is around $93,000. If that happens and the stochastic RSI pulls all the way back down below 20 and the relative strength index comes closer to 50, then that's where I would expect the next bounce for Bitcoin. So as difficult as it is to predict the short term, the long term, we have been spot on this entire bull run because of the Bitcoin stock to flow rainbow model. And when you look at this model right here, in terms of the days of the next halving, it measures from like red to dark purple. I've shown you this in so many different videos where right now on this model, it's a little bit different than this indicator right here because the color phase is different. It shows that we are in yellow, which is roughly, 1,000 to 1,200 days until the next halving. And the stock to flow line is at about $358,000. So Bitcoin has a lot of ground to make it back up to where this plateau is on the stock to flow model. And if Bitcoin makes it up to there by the end of this bull run cycle, I would honestly be shocked. My price prediction for Bitcoin this bull run cycle is around $190,000. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it goes above that, but that's my conservative price prediction. And I'll share with you what that would mean for XRP here in a little bit for this bull run cycle by the end of this year. But the reason why so many people are subscribed to our channel and continue to watch these videos, and I appreciate you guys for watching them, even though we're not right all of the time in the short term, we have been right so far this bull run cycle because of this. When we transition from yellow to light green, that's when we see the biggest explosion for Bitcoin to the all-time high. In the last bull run cycle, we rallied above the stock to flow line up to that double top before the bear market kicked in after light green. And the cycle before then, you can see when we transitioned from yellow to light green, we exploded past the stock to flow line. Even the cycle before that one, going all the way back to 2013, transitioning from yellow to light green, we exploded above the stock to flow line. So the real question is not if Bitcoin sees a breakout the rest of this year, just based on the stock to flow model, it's how high does Bitcoin go before we see the bear market kick in. Because last bull run cycle, Bitcoin bounced from $29,000 and just barely breached above the high during the yellow phase at 64K. It only went up to looks like $69,000 on Bitstamp here. Every single exchange has a little bit different of a price for Bitcoin, but it was just barely past the high of April all the way here in November. So if we see a move to the upside for Bitcoin past $110,000 a lot faster over the next few months before September, then Bitcoin could do a lot better than most people think. Because as I just showed you guys in this model right here, we just transitioned from orange to yellow, and this yellow phase still has some time to play out before we transition to light green, and we're still below the stock to flow line that's at $362,000. So it has a lot of room to catch up.